What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well today. It is Thursday, September 26th, 2019, and this is Raphael Garcia here with Schwan Humes for episode 136 of the MMA Ratings Podcast. How are you doing there, Schwan? I want you to let everybody know exactly what's going on in your world and how things are.
Not too bad, man. I just got back from training a kid in basketball. I spent all Saturday. I was coaching. I had to coach two teams, so my whole Saturday from like 9 till 6:30 was just in a gym. Then I turned right back around Monday, and we had another game. So it's been an exhausting week. But my kids play really good. Like my whole team, and then my actual kids played really good this weekend and Monday. So I have no complaints. You just saw me making a fool of myself there on Monday. I was talking trash, dancing, giving everybody pounds, talking shit to the other coach. It was great. It was great. It was incredible. My kids were like, "Mom, come get this man. Come get this man before he embarrasses us any further."
But the real question is, how did your team do?
We won Monday. We played a really good team. We won Monday. They split my team up on Saturday. They split my JV team up and then had like 10 or 8 freshmen. The first team, JV team, won. The second one we lost because we just had like some girls who can't even dribble with their head up. Like they can't rebound, they can't like they couldn't do anything. Like I was trying to be nice, but it's very frustrating to have kids beg you to get in and then can't take 2 steps with the ball without traveling.
That's actually pretty funny.
And their parents like,
Well,
put him back in. I'm like, this is three turnovers in less than 40 seconds. I can't do it. I can't do it.
we are here trying to win.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
That's pretty funny, my man. But as always, thank you for your time today. We have some things to talk about in the world of mixed martial arts. But before we do, as always, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen to this show today. You can always subscribe to our channel here at MMA Ratings to catch all of the content that we produce. We do this podcast every Thursday, and I also do a pro wrestling podcast usually Wednesday or Friday. It's looking more like Fridays, but that's how it's going to go down. And as always, you can go over to MMA Ratings Net on Instagram and Twitter to catch all of our content there, and MMAratings.net, where you can go and rate the fights and let us know what you thought of the action from the week and how interested you are in the upcoming fights as well. So we're gonna go. Go ahead. Go
Raphael.
ahead. Go ahead.
Before
Go
we get
ahead.
into this, I have to ask you this question because I'm in the pro wrestling too, but you're more into it now than I am. You keep up things. I have a question. Like when you have somebody like a Ronda Rousey or like a real fighter who's into pro wrestling, there's a lot of beef in wrestling. Like guys don't like each other, they don't like working with
Mm-hmm.
certain guys.
Certainly.
How do you have an issue? How do you have an issue with a real fighter? Like if you have a problem with them, what do you do?
Well, see, here's the thing about professional wrestlers that people often forget that yes, if you took uh let's say I'm gonna use Brock Lesnar as an example. Brock Lesnar, former UFC world champion, but before then, he was a professional wrestler, big time name in across the industry, NCAA champion, dude's an athlete among athletes. There's a guy named Chris Jericho he was considered a cruiserweight for the longest time. I mean, he was under 225 pounds. He was, much smaller than what we recognize Brock Lesnar as. And he actually got into a backstage incident with Brock, like walked right up to his face and was ready to throw hands with him. Goldberg too, and people who are familiar with MMA may be familiar with Bill Goldberg as well, another big 265-pound heavyweight guy. But here's Chris Jericho ready to get into a fight over him with him because of things that happened in the ring, both men. And the thing that people forget about professional wrestlers is that they are some dirty ass fucking fighters. So yeah, you may have someone who may be a mixed martial artist, multiple time champion, grappling extraordinaire, striker extraordinaire, but these motherfuckers fight dirty as hell, like eye gouging, fish hooking, kick you in the nuts, they'll attack you from behind, like literally dirty, like dirtiest motherfuckers in the game. So yeah, you have people that can actually fight, but if you get slept from behind, you get slept from behind. There's nothing you can really do about that.
All right, fair enough. I just always wonder, I hear people like, I don't like this person, and I'm like, you might see this person, right? Like, in a one-on-one, this is probably going to go badly for you. So
That's
I
why
was
I
just,
said That's why you look at somebody like Matt Riddle, who's so hilarious because he has been in professional wrestling for so long now that a lot of people don't even know he was in the UFC. Like a lot of his probably his younger fans now, or even some of his other fans who are just professional wrestlers or professional wrestling fans may not know how big of a prospect he was in the UFC. But that's why he's such an interesting character because he's been talking about Brock Lesnar trying to get into a real fight with this man for the longest time. So it's pretty interesting to watch and it's pretty hilarious. And if you look at Matt Riddle now compared to who he was in the UFC, he's a much, much, much bigger star than he ever could have been.
Oh yeah, most definitely. He was never gonna really be a needle mover, as Dana likes to say it in the UFC. But he's done quite well for himself in wrestling. He's actually done really well.
Yeah, very true. I believe Dana White had to publicly apologize to him for saying some of the things he said to him when he first started professional wrestling. He was making jokes saying that he would never be a big star, and now here he is one of the biggest stars in the whole industry. So
Well, Dana's
yeah,
wrong a lot more than he's right.
I
Nobody
mean you're definitely
realizes
right.
that because
He's like
yeah,
the loud person in the room that they're the loudest, so people just let him have their way because they think that they'll be right. But it's like no, just because he's the loudest doesn't mean he's right.
yeah, exactly. Just because he gets a bunch of other idiots to agree with him doesn't mean he knows what he's talking about.
Exactly, exactly. So let's go ahead and dive into today's agenda. We got a couple of different news items I want to talk about, and we have some fight previews for this weekend. Pretty busy. It's a busy combat sports weekend across the board, from a boxing, MMA, ADCC is this weekend. I'll probably talk about that briefly before we go out. So there's a lot really going on today. But let's hop into UFC Mexico City, where we saw Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stevens. We saw this fight come down end in a matter of seconds when Jeremy Stevens takes an eye poke. The fight is called off. And, this is Jeremy Stevens here. This is a guy who was literally bailed out of jail so he could fight. This is a guy who has joked about not knowing that people are allowed to turn down fights. He's 15-15 in the UFC. He's been with them since 2007, I believe. I mean, this guy, he's fought like a murderer's row of fighters within the organization. Seeing him get poked in the eye, okay, the eye poke happens. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the idea that people are throwing around that he wanted a way out or he was looking for a way out or something like that, I've never. This is the type of frustration I have with mixed martial arts fans because it's just that level of ignorance of like not knowing what you're talking about, like fundamentally not knowing what you're talking about, not having any iota of understanding of what it takes to train, get in there to compete, get poked in the eye, get these random scary injuries that could change your lifestyle and your heartbeat. And that level of ignorance is so disturbing to me when I see this. What were your thoughts about the eye poke itself? What happened in the cage moments after? And like just the outcry that some people are putting out there that Stevens wanted a way out and he didn't want to fight.
It didn't really shock me, the reaction, because I mean nowadays, whether it's mixed martial arts or or traditional sports or just people working a job, the first thing when somebody gets in a situation is they say, well, if I was in that situation, I would have done this. I can't believe they reacted this way. You're making this many millions of dollars. Who cares if your big toe hurts, or who cares if your wrist hurts? And combat sports are even more vulnerable because everybody, at the base of everybody's actual spirit in their heart, especially men, everybody likes to think that they can fight. Some people accept they can't play basketball. They accept they can't play baseball. They accept all these other things because you have to be some super athlete. You have to have all these years of training. But when it comes to actual fighting, everybody believes they have a warrior spirit. Everybody believes they go to war, and if they had a broken leg and poked in the eye, they fight with one eye and they'd keep going. That's what everybody. That's what everybody likes to believe. That's what everybody basically espouses.
Schwan, you there? Hello.
Or it goes down from a low blow. 9 times out of 10, people are going to be making fun of that person and saying they're a coward. They were looking for a way out. They didn't want to fight. And that's happened in every sport. Happens in boxing on a routine basis. Everybody's like, oh, that wasn't a good body shot. He went down. He wanted a way out. Oh, he didn't hit him that hard. We don't know. We're not in that person's body. But for the average public who thinks they can fight and thinks they're a badass too, and you know that everybody on the street thinks they're 9 times out of 10 thinks they're a tough guy. They're just like, well, I wouldn't have given up if I was in that situation. That's all it is. It's just ego talking, and I'm not one bit shocked about it. I'm a little the extreme reaction, a little bit surprising, but the reaction of people booing him and thinking he's a coward, no, that's to be expected.
Yeah, I mean, I was just it's upsetting. It's disheartening, especially when you got to know who you're talking. We're not talking about Bob Sapp here. We're not talking about guys like that who are going out there throwing fights left and right. We're talking about a man who, even though you may not be the biggest fan of some of the things he's done, that he goes out there and fights at the highest level time and time again. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we saw from the fans. Throwing stuff into the cage, like that level of behavior. What was some of your thoughts about some of the stuff that the fans were doing and how they reacted?
But before I get into fans, I want to make one real quick point because we've discussed this before. When people have pulled out of fights because of injuries or illnesses or something, fighters actually set the table for this often because a fighter will say, I had one eye and I was willing to die in there. If I was sick, I would have taken the fight because it's for a title. Fighters set this unrealistic bar by the whole I'll die in there. I'm a warrior. I do this for free. They keep pushing the fantasy of mixed martial arts and combat sports instead of the reality. So when you keep pushing that, you can't be shocked when fans who constantly heard, I'm a warrior, I'm different than most people, where other people quit, I keep going, and then somebody sees you get poked in the eye, then you quit. I'm not saying that's bad, realistically, because I understand it. But when you set the bar so high and fighters do this one another, he's a quitter. He went out. He could have kept fighting. They do it all the time. So they've set this bar that nobody can really meet. And the minute you act like a human, the fans turn on you because you've been sold that this person's a warrior, a cyborg, a gladiator. Gladiators don't give up at eye pokes. As far as the fans, that was just ridiculous, man. I mean, that could have gotten so ugly. Somebody could have gotten hurt. I mean, he really could have been injured. Imagine one of those cans hit him in the head and cut him open. Imagine, one of them hit him in the eye and really damage him. Or if somebody's walking around, they slipped on ice and messed up their ankle, or who knows what could have happened. I mean, what if one of the fighters just ran out of the cage and started swinging on people in the crowd? That's perfectly possible. I mean, I don't know that the UFC can go back there for a while. I don't know if they really should go back there for a while because that situation could have gotten really, 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 really bad. I mean, it didn't get half as bad as it could have, and I'm just glad everybody got out there without injury. But the way those people were reacting, I thought somebody was going to come out of the crowd and try to attack Jeremy Stevens himself.
I mean, so as far as what happened at the gym, to be honest, we've seen worse at American sporting events. There was just a video going on from the Eagles' last home football game where two guys were fighting in the stands, rolling down the stairs. If you've ever been to a football game and you know how their chairs are set up, it's very easily to like fall over someone in the row in front of you. And these two men started fighting and were literally rolling down over people in the stands. Like we've seen worse situations across sports all over the world. If you've ever seen a soccer fight that goes on in Europe, I mean, those things are scary and dangerous. We had, I don't even want to compare it to the Malice in the Palace, which happened here years ago, because that's a different thing. But we've seen American fans act out and act the fool before in the past. So I hate that some individuals within the MMA MAGA space have tried to use this as an opportunity to detract against Latinos and the Latinx community. Yeah. But that doesn't surprise me.
I'm not with that. I'm not with that at all. They can't make it a racial issue. That's fans are angry, they're upset, and the reason you go to certain areas is because the fans are rabid fight fans. And what's short for? Fanatic. If these people weren't fanatical about combat sports, the UFC wouldn't exist. These people wouldn't get paid to fight in a cage. Guys wouldn't make hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to fight in a cage if you didn't have rabid fanatics who were into your sport. And if you're a fanatic about something, when it doesn't go your way, it doesn't end the way you want, what happens? How do you react? You react into the extreme. Just like when a guy wins and he can jump to the crowd and the crowd carries him and they're out there for hours cheering him on. That's the positive side. When a negative occurrence happens, they react just as passionately. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. The UFC can't make the money they make if people aren't that invested. But once again, when things go sideways, people are going to have those kind of reactions. And let's be honest, the UFC is going to find some way to spin this and use this to market future fights. I mean, that's what they do. They
I
have
mean,
bad
well,
behavior and they use it.
they're already rebooked for what the fight on in October. So I mean, they're already rebooked, and you know that this is going to be um, pitted on the back of that. I mean, they are like so. There was the footage of Stevens and Yair getting into it at the hotel, calling each other gay slurs, and you know all of that in some way, shape, or form is going to be used to promote this next fight.
Oh yeah, the UFC never takes any chance to take the low road and use behind the scenes footage and behind the scenes trash talk and slurs bashing races, genders, classes, or sexual tendencies to instigate a fight. Anything that helps their bottom line, the UFC will use it. And I don't know why everybody acts like the UFC is above that sort of thing. Like, I mean, it's not really the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts. Let's not push that. It's like the WWE of mixed martial arts. You know, I mean, they play up every sort of angle to sell the fight, and they'll do whatever it takes, no matter how disrespectful or how tacky it is. They'll do whatever it takes to make sure they get that to get the fans' eyes on it and get those pay-per-view buys. And that's been the way they've always done business.
True, true. So let's talk about another fight. Actually, let's take a step back here. Um, from a booking standpoint, how do you see Jeremy Stevens versus Yair Rodriguez 2 going? Is it going to be any different than what you thought this first time around, or does this backstory add a little bit more to what you're expecting to see when these two finally get back to the cage?
The only thing that the backstory might add is that somebody might fight particularly emotional and somewhat stupid. But the fact of the matter is, Jeremy Stevens is who Jeremy Stevens is going to be. He's been in the business for a long time. He's fought the best, hasn't beat the best, but he's fought the best and he's competed. I feel as far as a fighter, he doesn't have many more evolutions or there's improvements he can make. I just don't know that he's a guy who's capable of making huge sweeping improvements to get better at this point. I feel like he is who he is. And Yair Rodriguez, for the fact that he is young and he has a lot of potential, I think right now he's kind of hit a plateau where what he's done has been working. So it's only been little minor adjustments. He hasn't suffered such a devastating loss to where he's had to really go back to the drawing board and readjust everything he does. So I kind of feel like these guys are who they are and they're going to fight the way they fight. You can't fix your defense over 6 or 7 months. You really can't fix it over a year. You can't fix your footwork dramatically. You can have minor improvements, but under duress, you're going to resort to what you always do because you haven't made it second nature. So the way I called the fight the first time is pretty much the way I called the fight this time. It's going to be the same fight. It's just going to be a matter of who gets to who first, who can exploit whose holes earliest in the fight. Because in general, these guys aren't the kind of guys who turn fights around. They're kind of like you're losing a fight, you lose it. You're winning a fight, you win it. Neither guy has shown the maturity or the depth of skill to really turn fights around on a dime, not against upper level opposition. So I don't really think the fight anything really changes. They're going to make it seem like things are changing because of the bad blood behind it. But the fact of the matter is, once they get in the cage, this is a professional event, and neither one of them wants to lose. Stevens losing isn't anything different, but Yair Rodriguez has a lot to lose. Hasn't been great the past 2 years, and Yair is being considered as a potential star in the division. The loss to Jeremy Stevens sets him back 2 or 3 fights, so he really can't afford to lose this fight. But like I said, regardless of who wins, to me, neither guy is a contender. It's just showing that they're one level below a contender and one level above a journeyman.
So, do you really think Yair could be a star in the organization, especially with the way he was cut unceremoniously from the UFC for when he supposedly refused to fight Zabit?
I think he can. He's an active fighter. He's dynamic. He's been in fairly exciting fights. He's got that comeback of the year fight win against the Korean Zombie knockout. He is a knockout against Andre Feely, which is a highlight reel fight. And for the most part, all his fights are high action, high contact, high intensity. It's kind of fights that people tune in to see. And as good as dynamic as he can be offensively, he's so flawed defensively and so wild with his offense that he can't really get into a boring fight. He doesn't have the skills to make a fight boring. He's basically a guy who's exciting because he has to be, because he doesn't have the skills or the strategic awareness to make a fight boring. He doesn't have that development in his game as of yet. And that takes time to develop. And right now, I don't think he has any interest in developing it. So he's got star potential. I don't. He's a good looking guy. He's exciting. He's in shape. He's got a little bit of a backstory, and the fact is he's Mexican, and that comes with a certain support system all of its own. It's really going to come down to how much of a persona he can show outside of the cage, and constantly winning to justify it. I
True,
don't think he has the charisma right now, but I mean, all you got to do is get in the right position, say the right thing, and next thing you know, you're on a run.
true, true. What did you think of his interactions with Michael Bisping when Bisping tried to walk up to him and talk to him?
I didn't know what was wrong with him. I guess he was just hyped from the whole thing and all pumped up. I mean, it's funny, so that would have been like a regular announcer. He probably would have jumped back and Bisping just was like looking at him. It's like when Kobe, the guy tried to fake Kobe out by throwing the ball in his face and Kobe didn't flinch. This dude's yelling and
Yeah,
screaming like he wants to fight. And Bisping's just like, all right, you calm now? Okay, let's do this interview. So that was kind of funny. It was weird. I mean, I don't know, dude. I'm just glad it wasn't like a regular announcer or somebody, or a fighter who's got a hotter temper, because that could have been a situation that got set off right there too. Uh,
very
it just
true.
seemed really, he was just reacting really weird to it. I've never seen a person get that angry and be that frustrated with the events. I don't know if something was said before or something happened before, but I think at one point he was trying to run out of it just didn't make any sense. Everything he was doing did not make any sense to me at all. And I'm just glad he didn't do something that he would have regretted, that would have caused real repercussions for the UFC. Let's say a basketball player running into a crowd and a mixed martial artist running into a crowd. That's two completely different stories.
So I want to talk about one other fight from UFC Mexico with Carla Esparza getting a I think it was split decision over Alexa Grasso. Everyone's talking about the moment where her arm was basically bent into the shape of a U. What did you think about this fight? And man, we talked a lot about Carla Esparza and her grit, and I mean, it really showed through. We almost called it for this fight on this past Saturday. What did you think about what you saw from Carla? And is she ever going to challenge for the title again?
First of all, I don't know that she can ever really challenge for the title. The people she'd have to beat to uh to get to it, I just don't think she can still beat. I still think her it's kind of like the Betch Kohei effect, except she's got a little bit more defined skill set. At some point, I know athletic in fighting, it's the romantic aspect of it is your will and your grit and how hard you're willing to push. But the thing people forget is fighting to a certain degree is like any other sport. At some point, athleticism comes into play. You can be in the best shape, you can have the best mind, you can have the best skills, but at some point, if you're a step and a half slower than somebody, or you jump a step and a half lower, or you're not as strong or not as explosive, at some point that catches up to you. Because an elite athlete doesn't have to be as dedicated as you to give you the fight of your life. And if they are as dedicated as you, they just walk right through you. And Esparza has some hard limitations when it comes to her fighting style. That's why she has to grind people down. That's why she has to be so well prepared. That's why she has to be able to be defensively sound on the feet and on the ground, as well as offensively sound on the feet and on the ground, because she doesn't have that one punch power to turn a fight around. She doesn't have a huge chin that can take all sorts of punishment and she can hang around till someone gets tired. She doesn't have the physical strength that if she doesn't have her hands in the perfect position to get the takedown, she can just power you down or explode forward and muscle you down. She doesn't have anything. It has to be pitch perfect. And if it's not pitch perfect, it has to be consistent, push, put that mental pressure on you, put that physical pressure on you so you eventually break or hesitate, and then she can get to the spot she needs to get into. She doesn't have a cheat code. She has no way to turn a fight around if a fight gets out of control. And that's something that the girls at the higher echelon of this division all have the ability to do. She does not, and that's what's always kind of put a hard cap on her. If she even was half the athlete of Claudia Gadelha was, she would have beat Claudia Gadelha. But the simple fact of the matter is Claudia Gadelha kept taking her down and basically out athleting her. Every time Claudia hit her, she backed her up. Every time she got her hands on her, she put her down. And no matter what Carla could do, she could barely get back up. And when she did get back up, she couldn't stay back up against a one-legged, limping, tired, out of shape Claudia Gadelha. She couldn't even keep the fight on the feet long enough to wear her out, and she had everything working in her favor and still couldn't pull it off. So I feel like she's hit a hard ceiling as far as how far she can go, especially against mentally strong and athletically gifted fighters. And even in this fight, as much as all the good work she did earlier on, you could feel the tide of the fight turning. And to be honest, that last round should have been a 10-8 round. She couldn't do anything with she couldn't do anything with her. She was too strong, stuffing takedowns. Every shot she was hitting her was snapping her head back. took her down and had her in positions where, to be honest, the referee could have stopped that fight. To be honest, just to save her arm. I've seen refs stop fights just to protect the fighter. The ref, knowing that she's a veteran, let her work her way out of it. But there's been other refs who've called fights even without somebody tapping, especially when they see the arm bent like that. Think about what Ronda did to Misha Tate. Misha didn't tap. The referee stopped the fight. So, I mean, you saw the best and the worst of Carlos Esparza. You saw the game planning, you saw the poise, you saw the maturity under pressure, you saw the consistency and the activity and the smart and the disciplined movements and the controlled aggression. But you also saw that once the athlete turned it on and really decided they were going to put their stamp on the fight, there wasn't anything Carla could do. I mean, she literally had nothing she could do against her when oh my God, I'm forgetting her name right now. Um, Grasso. As soon as Grasso turned it on, she had nothing for her. For that third round, she had nothing for her. After she had pretty much cemented the way the fight was going, she had nothing for her. Couldn't take her down. Couldn't land on the feet. Couldn't control her. Couldn't slow her down. Alexa just had her way with one of the most seasoned and proven veterans in women's mixed martial arts, and she dominated her. It made it look easy too. I really thought that fight could have been a 10-8 round and actually won it for Grasso. But like we said before, Esparza's a disciplined, mature, focused, and well-trained fighter who's not going to crack in those tough spots. And because she didn't crack, and because she didn't give up, she didn't just give up, and she knew how to work her way out and stay calm. That's what won her the fight. I'd say that almost 90% of the division would have tapped in that armbar in that situation.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, that's really a lot to kind of break down there. I'm not gonna say I'm surprised the way that the fight kind of fell, kind of ended up. It's because it went a lot along the ways that you called it. What I am always more interested in is the way that Esparza just does not go away. And not only does she not go away in the fights that she's in, but she doesn't go away as a contender itself. She's almost like Glover Teixeira is for the light heavyweight division, except she's not nearly as old. She hasn't nearly been as around in the UFC as long as he has. But she's someone that you can't just throw any young contender in there against because she'll beat them and then she'll remain within the top five of the division. But we know that she'll struggle to regain that title, and if she does regain it, it'll be an odd situation to watch it occur. So she's definitely someone that I've just enjoyed on a flat out grit basis, and that again, like I said, she refuses to go away. Like right now, she's ranked number 8 in the division. I'm not sure if these rankings have changed since Saturday's fight. I believe they have because Alexa Grasso's dropped down 2 spots. But if you look at, I mean, if let's say she gets paired against a Michelle Waterson, that's a fight that might be difficult for Waterson to win. And even if you look at, I mean, we saw what she did with Tatiana Suarez. I mean, she basically had to get put out there. I don't know if she's fought Nina Ansaroff yet, but Joanna Jędrzejczyk had to put her out of there on her shield. We talked about the Claudia Gadelha fight. She could win 1 to 2 fights and be within the top 5 by the end of 2020.
I mean, she could. She's kind of like she's like a female version of Glover Teixeira on a certain level. She's clearly not elite, but she keeps knocking off everybody with the potential to be elite. She's just so seasoned, has so much maturity that when you make a minor mistake, she's at to turn the fight. She did it against Cynthia Calvillo. She did it against Rose Namajunas when Rose first got in the UFC. Now she did to Alexa Grasso. All these girls who are big, strong, dynamic athletes with good striking, good wrestling, good grappling. She completely shut them down. She completely shut them down until they asserted themselves. And in the case of Grasso, when Grasso turned it on, as far as they didn't have anything for her, and you kind of wonder what would happen if Grasso just came out and really tried to put a stamp on the fight early. Like what could have happened had she decided she's gonna assert herself earlier in the fight instead of waiting so late till she was behind the 8 ball.
True there. So I have a new agenda item to add. This is something I just saw. It's probably about an hour or two old. The news just broke, but BJ Penn has been released from the UFC. The MMA Junkies reporting it. Yahoo Sports is reporting it. I believe MMA Fighting is as well. But former two division champion BJ Penn, who has not won a fight since I believe 2010, 2011, I think Diego Sanchez is his last victory, has been released from the UFC. Wow, I'm not surprised that this news has come because we all know about the legal troubles he's been in, the video clips of these street fights that he's been in. Obviously, he hasn't won a fight in years. He hasn't looked the same, and there's been a lot of pressure, external pressure to the UFC to cut him. What are your thoughts about this release here? And do you think it's in Penn's best interest that the UFC released him, or should they have kept him on the roster and just not given him any fights?
Um, I mean, I don't know that it changed anything. The biggest question of a Penn is how is he living his life outside of the cage? Like, is he happy? Is he is he being successful? Does he have business ventures? Does he have things that he can involve himself in that don't include him fighting directly? Does he have some sense of purpose? In that case, the UFC cutting him doesn't resolve anything because that doesn't take care of him outside the cage, whether he's taking care of his money or his personal life. So the UFC, him fighting was the obvious problem. The actual real issue is how fighting has taken a toll on him and how maybe his inability to deal with life outside the cage. You see somebody like a GSP who's retired, he's doing great. He's doing fine. He's done some movies, made some appearances. He's come and gone a little bit, but he's more or less been a success. His biggest success outside the cage has been inside the cage. Somebody like BJ Penn seems to really struggle with not being in the spotlight, not being a fighter. It seems like that defined his personality. So yeah, as far as a professional sport and him as a fighter, yeah, they're doing great by cutting him. But as far as like how this protects him or looks out for him outside of the cage, there's nothing Dana White can do about that, and there's nothing the UFC can do about that. And that's where the biggest concern for him is. I'm not so concerned about him getting beat up in the cage. I'm concerned with him getting in street fights with regular people outside of bars. That's the real problem.
Do you think we're headed for a situation where he is signed by like Bellator or World Series of Fighting? Do we see that happen?
I don't think World Series of Fighting. Maybe Japanese. They'll like those sideshow fights. And to be honest, if you're putting BJ Penn against another faded older fighter who doesn't have it anymore, once again that becomes fair. That becomes even. So now the disparity in youth and conditioning and explosiveness isn't as dramatic. That actually is a competitive fight because you have people who aren't who they used to be competing at the same level, like a master's level at a grappling tournament. It's like you wouldn't have some of those guys have the skill level to compete with the younger guys, but
Hey,
they don't
watch
have
your
the
mouth,
condition.
sir. I'm in the Masters division. Watch your mouth. Watch whatever you're about to say right now. Watch your mouth.
I was wondering. I was like, why's Raphael get so quiet? You were just over there fuming like this.
Yep.
I'm gonna have to go to Texas and choke this fool out. Okay, well, for those youthful and exuberant and seasoned guys, not old, seasoned. They're seasoned.
Damn
It
right.
just it evens things out a little bit. I mean, I know this wasn't a real fight in Bellator, but you had Kimbo against Ken. Now, some people said it was work, whatever, but Ken at 50 or whatever, having lost a couple steps, having lost a couple fights, not being as durable, him against a Kimbo is now competitive because of where Ken's at in his career. Ken in his prime even kills Kimbo. But once you level the playing field, you have other fighters who are in a similar career arc as BJ, you might get a competitive fight out of it. You might have somewhat of a back and forth in an even contest. But when you have them against these young guys who are 2 times faster, probably bigger, stronger, conditioned better because they haven't been beating up their bodies over the career he's had with the weight cuts and the fights, he can't compete against these guys anymore. So I mean, if his best bet would probably go to Japan, where they could find some, maybe have him fight a Shinya Aoki, who isn't a damaging fighter, or maybe a Takanori Gomi, or some other big name Japanese fighter who's on the tail end of his career. Even a Tatsuya Kawajiri fight might not be too bad for BJ Penn because and he's trending towards the end of his career as well. You could have him fight some names who are on his level, and you might actually see BJ Penn get a couple wins together. But you can't have him fighting active, young, fresh contenders right now. They're just using him as a stepping stone, and he's just taking unnecessary beatings and suffering unnecessary, embarrassing losses. Because at this point, I don't even mind if BJ loses. I just want to see him be in the fight, be competitive, so I can see some of that old BJ Penn, even if it's just for a couple rounds or a couple minutes. Like when he fought Dennis Seaver and he dropped him, I was like, BJ's back. I mean, I knew he wasn't, but it was just nice to see him competing well against somebody. But that's the only way they can do it. I guess Bellator could take a shot at him, but who would they put him up against?
I mean, Miles Jury, he's fighting Benson Henderson. He hasn't looked the same at that he looked in a long time. I mean, I really don't know who they put him. Like we know that they have no problem picking up older fighters, but I don't see any value in BJ Penn. I mean, if anything, if I was his management team, close circle team, you could easily get BJ Penn in some grappling events. I mean, professional grappling is growing as an industry. He may not make as much money. He could probably make a livable wage in that circuit if he's still effective, but that's really the only space I could see him. I wouldn't want him getting back into the cage in any way, shape, or form.
It's very sad because he should be having a victory lap. He was a popular fighter. He was the first Hawaiian fighter to make it big. Like he should be like running a gym or having some kind of political position or running an organization. Like all this stuff just seems so beneath him, man. It's depressing. Like this is beneath you, dog. It's like I don't know. Troy even came out of retirement or he was announcing for the XFL. Like, dude, you were a 3-time Super Bowl champion, man. One of the best quarterbacks ever. You're announcing for the XFL. Like, leave that for some third string guy or some guy, some backup quarterback. Like, you're Troy Aikman. You should be covering the best sport possible. You shouldn't be over here in this side sport. It's like if LeBron was playing in the big baller brand, the JBA. Like, come on, dude, you're LeBron. You're above this kind of stuff, man. I know we shouldn't say that. Certain people, nothing's above anybody. But LeBron in the big three, that wouldn't look right. Kobe in the big three, nah. I know it's good basketball, but Kobe shouldn't be in the big three. Just like Malignaggi shouldn't have been doing bare knuckle boxing. It's just
Yeah,
beneath you, dude. You're a world champion. Come on, man.
yeah, you're right about that. Let's talk about one other news item that came out today, and it's Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington is looking to be booked at UFC 245. This will be the third title fight on that card. We have Max Holloway versus Volkanovski. We have Amanda Nunes versus Jermaine Durandamy, and this is looking like the third fight on that card. It'll be at the T-Mobile Center, and I think in LA. I think that's where that location is, or one of the. What I think it's LA. But what are your thoughts about this here, man? Booking this fight, if this fight is booked, that it's not officially announced, putting it on a 3-title card with Nunes, Max Holloway. Do you think this benefits them too? Do you think that they'll be able to get the money that they've been seeking now with this type of placement?
First of all, I don't think this card is going to do very well. No offense, dude. I don't see a really appealing, well well thought out fight that can sell between all three of them. Nunes isn't a big seller. Holloway has some appeal, but Volkanovski ain't gonna get it. And Colby Covington, he might draw your ire, but he doesn't draw fans into seats. That's the problem. So I don't think this event does very well at all. I really don't. It's funny seeing Colby, because Kobe's going to say that he dictated to the UFC, and it's funny seeing him having to actually back down and have to take this fight for what he admitted is going to be short money. He knows the position he's in. He doesn't have any leverage, and he's going to have to accept the UFC's terms so he can get his title fight. And hopefully for him he wins, because I don't think he generates enough interest that if he loses the title fight that he's going to be on anybody's radar. The only thing that's kept him on the radar is the fact that he's kept winning. Once he loses, I don't think a lot of people have a lot of interest in him. And if he loses in a devastating fashion, I really don't think a lot of people have a lot of interest in him. He's not a particularly exciting fighter, and he's not charismatic or clever in the trash he talks. So he really needs to win this fight. He's in that Tyron Woodley, and he's in that Kamaru Usman boat. Like, you don't have that belt, we don't really care about you. So I'm as a professional, I hope he wins. As a person, I'm kind of hit or miss. I don't really care. But yeah, I don't think he's getting more money, and I think he's basically being bullied into taking this fight because he knows that if he doesn't get a title shot, eventually somebody's going to knock him off, or they're just going to start lowering his pay, and he's not going to have a choice. So he might as well go for the title, see if he can get some leverage through that, which isn't going to work either because he's not popular enough. But I see what he's trying to do. I just don't think it's going to work for him.
True. I definitely I see this fight. I looked at it, the whole card itself. Let me see if I still have it up. And I agree. I don't think this is going to be a huge draw of an event. Let's see. UFC 245 right now has Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, Amanda Nunes, Jermaine Durandamy, Robbie Lawler, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Matt Brown versus Ben Saunders, and Jessica I versus Viviane Araujo. So I'm not too sure about this card as a whole. It's at the T-Mobile Center, December 14th in Las Vegas, Nevada. So yeah, we'll see
I
how
want
that
to I
really
want to see all
goes.
these people who complain the UFC doesn't push Amanda Nunes, and she's been getting a raw deal, which she hasn't. She got to fight the biggest names in mixed martial arts, one after the other, and got paid very well to do it. Since the UFC's so fair and nobody gives her the coverage she's supposed to, I'm expecting all y'all to pay that paywall and pay the pay-per-view to show that she's a actual draw. Everybody keeps complaining the UFC won't push her, UFC won't push her. Put your money where your mouth is, and the UFC will go where you go. If
Well,
it
she's not
means
even the main
buying,
event. She's
it
not
doesn't
even the main
matter.
event. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
she like so I don't expect. I mean,
if
Max
people go
Holloway
on the boards and say
is the A
I'm
side.
buying this for, if they say I'm buying this for Amanda Nunes, and they come out in force, and all her fans from all across the country come out showing there, and she gets the biggest reception at the weigh-ins, they can prove their point. But they don't care enough to do the work. I hate people who just get on Twitter and complain and write these long articles. Don't do that. You want to make an impact? Get 100 of your friends and have all y'all buy two of the pay-per-views. Go to the event, follow her around, buy her gear, put her name out there all the time. Get sponsors for her. If you really want to see her get the money she deserves and get the push she deserves, show the UFC she can make money and watch how much money they put into her. But until that happens, it doesn't matter. It's just complaining. So this is the chance for everybody to prove Amanda Nunes has something to go for. Because if this isn't a huge buy rate, it's not Max Holloway's fault. We know it's not Max Holloway's fault. It's going to be everybody beneath him's fault. Because Holloway's been able to sell a little bit. He's got a bit of a fan base. The rest of these people are unproven as hell. So if this is a bad pay-per-view buy, I'm not looking at Max Holloway. I'm looking at these other two. Colby Covington, Amanda Nunes, I'm looking directly at you guys. Y'all got to carry your weight. Because if they sell 300,000, I'm going to assume 250 are because of Max Holloway.
True, true. Let's talk about let's look in. Okay, so that was the last news item I wanted to talk about. Let's go ahead and move into some fight previews for this weekend. We have two events I wanted to talk about. Two fights each. I pulled out. We have UFC Copenhagen, where we have what's his name? Jack Hermanson is facing off against Jared Cannonier. I want to talk about that fight. So Schwan, I'm gonna let you jump in first. What are your thoughts about this bout here? Is this a main event? Because what I'm seeing in reference to this fight is more and more people are just talking about Cannonier's story about how, a couple years ago he weighed 300 pounds, got into MMA, and now he's down to what, middleweight? Yeah, fighting at 185. What are your thoughts about this as a heavyweight, or excuse me, as a main event? Is this a fight that should get people excited, or do you think that this is a kind of like the bottom of the bottom when it comes to main event bouts?
It's really, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, in today's UFC, this is going to be a main event because they have so many events. They have to put somebody in the main event. Somebody has to lead the event. It doesn't matter if you're a draw. It doesn't matter if you're on a huge winning streak. All that matters is you have somewhat of a name, you have somewhat of a story, and they're going to put you at the head. Basically, they're going to throw names into the hat. Whoever comes out on top gets to be the main event on the card. This is really more of a prelim fight or maybe an opening match on the main card. To be honest, if we're being straight about the name value and the impact this fight would have on the division, it's not the sexiest fight. It's not the most technical and layered fight. It's really being sold on the story of Cannonier, and Hermanson doesn't really have a personality, nor does he have the kind of wins that just makes people think that he's going to be the guy who could knock off an Adesanya or knock off a Whitaker or knock off a Romero. He's a guy who's trying to prove that he's elite in and of himself, to be quite honest. That win over Jacare was nice, but it wasn't It wasn't the kind of win where you're like, wow, he really showed me something. He's really made me a believer. So I mean, this is the main event by default. You see who else is fighting on the card. They couldn't leave with any of these guys. So it's just a result of having so many cards. Somebody's got to be the lead, and they chose these two guys.
So let's look at where they're ranked right now. Let's see. This is 185. Jared Cannonier is ranked number 9. Jack Hermansson's ranked number 5. Is this a title eliminator for either man? I mean, ahead of them is Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero, Kelvin Gastelum, and of course Israel Adesanya and Robert Whitaker. Do you see either one of these guys facing off against any one of this top 3? I don't think so.
No,
I think Paulo Costa, he's next in line for a title shot. Yoel Romero just came out of that Paulo Costa fight. Kelvin Gastelum is facing off against who does he has a fight coming up.
Darren Till.
Darren Till, that's right. And I mean, if I was any of those guys, I wouldn't want to face Hermansson or Cannonier in any way, shape, or form because they're just not a draw.
They're not a draw, and it's like you beat them. People expect you to beat those kind of guys. You lose to them, and it sets you back 3 or 4 fights. So you can't afford to fight a guy like that unless and even if it's a competitive fight. You know how the UFC is. You were supposed to smash somebody, and you don't. All of a sudden, they start looking at you a little bit differently and putting you into fights that you don't want to be put into because you didn't put a stamp on the fight or you didn't move the needle, however they want to call it. I just don't see the point of anybody who's got a name. These guys are trying to get to the point where they could fight somebody of that level. They haven't done enough on their own merits, whether it be wins or whether it be the skills they've shown in the cage to get a named fighter. I mean, to be quite honest, the fight is going to come down to does Cannonier's athleticism and power enable him to, in one of the spots he explodes in, win the fight, or does Hermansson's constant pressure and grappling-based attack give him enough to extend and eventually wear down and submit Cannonier? Because Cannonier hasn't shown much defensive grappling or much counter grappling. So if the fight hits the ground and Cannonier is not able to put something on Hermansson early, it should be Hermansson's fight. Hermansson can't get the fight to the ground and stays in extended exchanges on the feet. Cannonier's power and his explosiveness should be enough to turn the fight in his favor. And that's really as simple as the fight can be made.
So the fight that I am most excited for on this card isn't a main event fight. In fact, it isn't even. Is it a main card fight? Let me make sure. Yes, it is third from the top, where we have Gunnar Nelson facing off against Gilbert Burns. Now, the reason why this fight is important to me and the reason why it's timely.
That could have been a main event.
Correct. This could have been a main event. Let's look at quickly where these guys are ranked. This is. I don't think either one of these guys are ranked, to be honest, because it's maybe a welterweight fight. No, neither one of these guys are ranked either way. But what is so most important to me about this fight here is because it's timely. Gunnar Nelson, Gilbert Burns actually was supposed to participate in ADCC this year. I believe he placed third in 2017. This is a bi-weekly. It's a semi-annual grappling event, basically considered the Olympics of grappling. And I think he took bronze in 2017 in his weight class. He was offered a slot in this year's event, but he turned it down so he could take this fight. Gunnar Nelson also competed in ADCC he competed in ADCC twice in 2009 and 2011. In 2009, in both times he placed fourth, I believe. So, I mean, he's had some success in that space. Now you have these two guys stepping into the cage to fight MMA, where obviously you have all those different facets that add into their grappling space. So I'm really interested in seeing how this fight breaks down. If it's going to be a stand-up affair where you have the two guys seeing who can best implement their striking game, or are we going to see these guys grapple against each other, and are we going to see a clinic? Because two examples stand out to me. You had the fight against Damian Maia and Jake Shields from years ago, where a lot of people forget Jake Shields manhandled Damian Maia in that fight. He mounted him twice No one else can even claim to come close to that when we talk about Damian Maya, what his abilities are on a mat. Jay Shields mounted his ass twice. So that really kind of like stands out as a major moment to me that a lot of people forget to talk about. And then the other point that I always kind of reiterate when talking about grappling and mixed martial arts is when Damian Maya basically abused Gunnar Nelson as well a couple years ago. So I'm wondering what type of fight should we expect to see from these two men? Is this are they going to fight it out on the floor? Am I going to get my fix of grappling and mixed martial arts, or are they going to negate each other and be on the feet for majority of the fight?
Burns is a fighter who he always fights in these big spots, and he tends to get tired fairly consistently in his fights. So I can't imagine that he's going to be an extended stand up exchange. I mean, he's very dynamic, but the fact of the matter is he fights in spots, and when he isn't able to completely control somebody or walk right through him, he starts getting tired. When he starts getting tired, his defense completely collapses. And usually that's when he goes into desperation of grappling. He really hasn't fought with the best IQ, in my opinion. He's got all this ability, but he doesn't really seem to fight with the structure or the poise necessary to really maximize it. And he constantly exposes himself against guys he can't walk right through. Um, which makes me wonder if even the grappling is a good idea for him, just because, as you know, even when you're conditioning for grappling, it's very exhausting against a guy when you can't clearly get positions and clearly control him or clearly get submissions on him, because that means you're constantly working against the full strength of his body, and that takes a lot of energy to hold somebody down who knows what they're doing, to control them, to fight for wrist control, to get mounts, to get hooks in, to maintain position. That's very exhausting, which would also take away from his striking, which would also fade his gas tank, which would also make his defense on the ground suspect. So it's really I'm really curious how this fight goes. I'm assuming that he's going to come out early and try to catch Gunnar Nelson early, because Gunnar Nelson still uses the karate based style. His defense on the inside of the mid range isn't very good past an initial parry. His defense is all distance management and positioning. So you can catch him with hooks, you can catch him on the counter, you can get him to the body, you can kick him to the legs. You can really wear on him. The only difference is when you jump on Gunnar Nelson early, it kind of takes a minute or two to get his timing down and to figure out what you're doing against him. And in those early exchanges, he's super dynamic, he's super accurate, he hits really hard, and he can finish a guy very quickly. So it's I'm really interested to see how Burns approaches this fight. I really think it's a must win for both guys. Burns hasn't looked great recently, and he's not even in anybody's discussion as an elite welterweight. And Gunnar Nelson's had some fights that he was expected to win that he did not, and he lost fairly decisively. So I think another loss really puts him on the outskirts of the welterweight and really puts him on the outskirts of working with the UFC. So it's really it's going to be a very high stakes fight for both guys. Two guys who have very clear holes in their game and very clear limitations as physically as fighters. But I'm probably going to favor Nelson. I just don't have a lot of faith in Burns. He's so hit or miss, and I don't know any way that this fight goes, whether it's on the ground or on the feet, where he at some point is not going to exhaust himself and set himself up to be finished.
Yeah, I find it very intriguing in that same space as well. He does fight at a very high pace, and we know that Nelson has shown an ability for patience in the cage, even when he's in bad spots. So I think this is an interesting fight for me, and this is the fight that I'm looking forward to the most out of the whole weekend. Uh, Schwan, what else are you looking for out of this UFC card before we move on over to Bellator?
Interested to see how Lena Landsberg does. I mean, she's on a win streak. She came off a really big one-sided win over Tanya Evinger, even though Evinger hasn't looked great. That's the kind of fight that you would have thought that Lena Landsberg would have lost in her prior incantations in the UFC. She's really shown a good all-round game, like not just defensive grappling and counter grappling, but she's shown the ability to be offensive with her grappling and mix it in with her striking. Um, Jason's a girl who is an up and comer and has some potential, and she's basically jumping headfirst in the deep end of the water. Fighting a Gina Mizani or Sarah Moras is much different than fighting somebody like Lena Landsberg, who's really established in the division and has shown that she can compete with the better fighters. So this is a chance for Macy to take a huge step forward if she can beat Landsberg. She essentially takes her heat, and being a younger fighter who's had a bit of a push by the UFC, she really has a chance to really jump right into the higher levels of the division and possibly be a bantamweight contender before the year is over.
Say that last
And
part
if
again.
Landsberg went, I said if she beats Lena Landsberg, she could take a huge jump forward and be considered uh, a contender in the bantamweight division before the year's over. And if Landsberg wins, she's going to slowly creep into a position where she's going to be a legitimate contender because she's put so many fights together and she's done so well. So this is really a fight that's going to determine one of the top contenders, possibly for the title, possibly to fight the winner of Nunes Durandamy in the next couple months, next year or so. Because if she, like I said, Macy wins, she's going to get a big push. Bantamweight division is super thin. You don't have to win many fights to be considered a contender. And against Landsberg, Landsberg's won like 3 out of 4, maybe won her last 3. She's in a position where she's one step from being a contender herself. So whoever wins this fight, they may not be real, actual contenders for Nunes or Durandamy, but they will actually, in the terms of their rankings, be actual legitimate world title contenders and be in a position to fight for a world title before the year's up.
Okay. All right. Good thoughts there, sir. Let's move over to this Bellator card because that's the next one. To be honest, totally forgot that this card was going on this weekend. But we have James Gallagher versus Roman Salazar at the main event. They're fighting in Dublin, Ireland. And I mean, you have Michael Venom Page fighting against a 3-1 Richard Keeley. You know, it's like, what is Bellator doing? The only fight on this card that I want to stop and watch is Benson Henderson and Miles Jury. But talk to me about this card here, Schwan. When you look at everything you see here, does this even stand out to you? And do you want to even see this?
Isn't Pitbull fighting on this card?
Uh,
Is this the one where he fights Archuleta?
I don't. I think that's the next one. Let me
Okay.
look. Let me
I
look.
thought
Let
they
me
were
look
still
real
doing the
quick.
tournament.
No, that's the. So okay. So hold on. They fight on Saturday. Gallagher versus Salazar is Friday. Pitbull and Archuleta is Saturday.
Okay, yeah. Um,
And okay, so I forgot. I see. I'm sorry. I'm okay. I apologize, Bill. So I won't give you too much shit this time. 'Cause I completely forgot that you have a Friday and Saturday card. The Saturday card is Pitbull and Archuleta, Gegard Mousasi versus Lyoto Machida, Darian Caldwell versus Henry Corrales, Daniel Whiteshield versus Saul Rogers, AJ McKee versus Georgia Karakani, Leandro Higo versus Sean Bunch. I mean Antonio McKee. This is a card here. AJ Agazarm. They have a bunch of people on. Okay, this right here is a card. This Friday card, they might as well cancel.
yeah, the Friday card, basically Bellator is just trying to expand their brand. They know they can't really compete with the UFC in America, especially. So they're trying to develop their own homegrown stars. And I mean, they have a lot of fights in Europe and just all over Europe and other places. So this is basically a showcase event trying to take the next step in building James Gallagher as a star and hopefully kind of get MVP back on the winning track and hopefully add some more shine. He gets a highlight reel knockout or highlight reel win. It's gonna pick up some of the shine he lost in his loss to Lima. And with Henderson, they're trying to find out a legitimate contender to the lightweight championship, even though there's no way you can have a legitimate contender because the lightweight champion is also in the featherweight tournament. So I don't know what I don't know what the actual end game is with Benson Henderson because whoever wins this fight should be a contender, but you can't fight the champion because he's currently not available to fight because he's in a featherweight tournament. Unless they're going to do an interim title, which I don't know the Bellator's ever done before. But this event is just really trying to expand their brand and put James Gallagher in a position where he can get another win, an impressive one, and take another step to being their version of a Conor McGregor, someone who excites fans, gets outside media attention, and can kind of get a fan base who can take Bellator to the next level. Because it's not really so much the events; it's how invested you can get the fans in. If you get fans really invested, that's when you get pay-per-view buys. That's when you get knock out of the park ratings. That's when you get paraphernalia being sold and you get to break from the normal sports media and the normal mixed martial arts media and get into the ESPNs and the Fox Newses and all the other events, all the other sporting broadcasts across the world. That's what they're hoping that he's going to be able to do for them because he's young, he's brash, he's only got one loss, and he's fairly exciting in what he does. So they're just trying to use this as a platform to build his star, and they're only using this as a platform to help build MVP star. Even though, to be honest, this fight's kind of a big step backwards for him as far as the quality of an opponent. But I'm sure they had their reasons. They were protecting him before. And to be honest, against in a Douglas Lima fight, he did well enough where I don't feel he needs to be protected. He beat Paul Daly clean. He was doing well against Lima. I don't know that you need to protect him at this point. I think now's the time where you start moving him up and seeing what he really has. Because you can't if he let's just say he loses to a guy like this, the damage is irreparable. You've already got him on the path to facing good guys. Don't take 5 steps backwards just to get him on the winning track again. Either he can swim or he can at this stage. He's already made money. He's already become a star. We need to see him and see how well of a fighter he can be at this point.
You're right. Either he can swim or he can't. That is a good analogy to use there. And looking at this, see, in my opinion, this Bellator card on Saturday is better than the UFC card. This is the best card of the night here. I mean, we got Freire, Archuleta, Masasi, Machida. I'm interested in that rematch. Darian Caldwell out there again trying to get back to title contention, but this time in the featherweight division. There's a lot to kind of digest here. When Bellator puts these type of cards together, do you see them as a true competitor to the UFC?
Yeah, and we've had this discussion so many times. People who listen to our show are going to be saying, "Oh, here it comes again," and it is coming again. The problem is they don't have the depth. They don't have enough guys. 1 through 3, they can compete in almost every single division. But when you get into 5 through 7, 7 through 10, 10 through 15, that's where UFC separates from Bellator. They have divisions where the top 15 guys who are top 15 through 17 can compete with guys who are top 5 through 1. That's how good the divisions are. The Bellator goes from fighting elite guys to essentially squash matches. And the sad thing about them, without having that depth, is a lot of their elite guys are older guys who just don't have it anymore. So they're essentially being used as stepping stones. They're not really in the position where they're in competitive fights anymore. So when Bellator can do this, it makes them look really good. It shows that they could that all the talent isn't in the UFC, but it also reminds you of what separates the UFC from everybody else, and that's numbers. That's depth. It's like the difference between playing at a D1 school and playing at a D2 or D3. D3 schools have D1 talent. JUCO schools have D1 talent. But the question is how much D1 talent? D1 schools have 1 through 4 D1 talent. D2 schools have 1 through 2 D1 talent. D3 schools 1, and so on. And that's the difference, the depth of the talent. And Bellator has never found a way to get around that. They haven't developed enough guys because those guys get thrown into fight with these overly experienced, still in their prime fighters and suffer humiliating, if not punishing losses. And then the older guys end up fighting each other 3 or 4 times because there's not enough other elite guys to match them up with. So you see repeats of the same fight. I mean, how many times did Daniel Strauss fight Pat Curran? How many times did Michael Chandler fight Eddie Alvarez? You know what I mean? It's like you see so many rematches because there's no one else for them to fight of a comparable level.
Yeah, true. It's definitely there are definitely more points of interest where I look at Bellator and I'm like, man, they put on some fights that I would rather see over fights that are going on within the UFC at the same time. And I think what I like the most about them is that they're willing to try new things. We talked about what they're doing with their featherweight tournament and how they did like the reseeding for that and allow people to pick their fights. I think that's really exciting and interesting. I think that the UFC would never do something like that. But the fact that they're
No.
willing to try different things, that's always the biggest indicator of a disruptor to me. So I think that is a positive step, a positive direction forward for the sport as a whole.
But when you're in their position, you don't have a choice. You have to take chances. It's kind of like, it's like when you're in a fight and you're down and it's the last 30 seconds, last round, they say just go get them. You have to go get them. You're down 4 rounds to none and you've only got 5 minutes away to win. You can't play it safe. Surviving ain't going to be good enough. Running ain't going to be good enough. Being technical ain't going to be good enough. You've got to get a finish. So, and Bellator is in a position where they don't have the luxury of sitting back and waiting or trying to figure it out or we're going to play by the same rules. They have to do whatever they can to separate themselves so that people will pay attention to them and people won't lump them into the UFC. Because there's still people who think when they hear Bellator, they think it's some division of the UFC. So the only way they can separate themselves is have these tournaments, have these fighters fighting out of division, have heavyweights fighting as light heavyweights, middleweights fighting as heavyweights, just trying to get as many names as possible out there to get some kind of reaction to get eyes on their event. They don't have the luxury of having an established brand with 1 through 17 elite fighters who can draw attention and can be justified in drawing attention because they're so good. They got maybe 1 through 5 guys who can legitimately draw that attention. The rest of the guys are just kind of finding their way or just there to build up their new guys or build up their established guys who need a rehab after a tough loss.
I agree with you there, sir. I definitely agree with you there. What are some final thoughts, man? Let everybody know what you're working on this week and where they can find your content.
One thing before I get into that, I have to reiterate, Bellator. I know they've paid the Pitbull brothers, and by that regards, they've done fairly well for them. And I know the Pitbull brothers aren't American fighters, but the fact of the matter is they've been with Bellator almost since the word go, and I don't feel that Bellator has ever really bought into them as as the faces of their organization. They've had Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, just Aaron Pico came in. They bring in guys from the UFC and they pay them all this money and they give them all this attention. They give them all this shine. When two of the best fighters you've had and two of the most exciting fighters you've had have been with your division, have been with your organization for years, and in my opinion, essentially they get treated like second class citizens. They get forced into these fights. They ask for fights they don't get. They kind of get these fights on a whim. They have to basically win all these fights to get in position. In the UFC, they don't treat the guys who've been consistent performers like them. And in Bellator, it just seems like if you have a name, they're going to put you over the established guys they've had over these years. To me, it's a bad look because as Pitbull, as Patricio has proven, he's an elite guy. He might be an all-time great as a featherweight and potentially a lightweight, but Bellator never went out their way to put him in position to be a star. They never put him in a position to win these fights. He was always like the second or third option, even in this tournament. I mean, a guy of his caliber, should he really have to do a tournament like this? I don't know, but I mean, it's what they're doing to draw interest and draw eyes. But I routinely have to talk about how I feel that the Pitbull brothers have been overlooked, misused, and unsupported by their company. This isn't like an Amanda Nunes thing. This is guys who've been top level guys for them for what, 6, 7, 8 years. They've been on dominant streaks for years, and they've never been really treated like it. They've never been pushed like they are big stars. They've kind of been the B side in all instances, and that just doesn't sit right with me. I expected better from Scott Coker. I'd expect this from Dana White. That sounds like this is like his style, but from Scott Coker, I just expected better.
True. Good thoughts there, sir. Let everybody know, what are you working on this week?
Um, I'm working on a couple things. I'm working on this article about things camp should do. I'm also working on I'm going to do an article kind of like I did with the Captain America thing. It's going to be Green Arrow because this is going to be the final season of Arrow. So I'm going to kind
Mm-hmm.
of do a realistic look at his fighting style, some of his favorite weapons, why they're effective, and his approach to fighting it, and use gifts and aspects to show him using these techniques or using these weapons in fights. It's kind of like give the fans of comic books their feel, but also give it like top notch analysis on the same end.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm covering a lot of grappling this week. It's a big, big, big weekend in professional grappling. It's ADCC, as I mentioned. This is the Olympics of competitive grappling. The top. So there's 5 men's weight classes with 16 men in each, and then there's 2 women's weight classes with 8 women each. So you win this, you are considered the best of the best. I mean, think of the movie The Best of the Best, that tournament, Bloodsport, whatever you want to think of. This is as close as we get to a real life event. And we also have a super fight on Sunday with Felipe Pena and Felipe Pena, excuse me, and Andre Galval, who are fighting for the super fight title on Sunday. So weigh-ins are tomorrow. This is going to be a hell of a weekend to look forward to. This week actually is a big week in professional wrestling as well, as we have the launch of AEW's weekly show. I'm going to that here in DC. So I will be covering that and a lot of the fallout from that over the week when it comes to WWE versus AEW and those Wednesday night wars, et cetera, et cetera. We have a boxing match this weekend too as well. Who's fighting this weekend? Schwan?
Errol Spence and Sean Porter.
Yeah, that's a big fight that a lot of people are talking about this weekend. We have Glory on Saturday as well. So yeah, there's a whole hell of a lot going on this weekend.
Yeah, it's a lot of events. I mean, but I have to admit, I admire your dedication to grappling. A lot of guys say they love grappling and say they cover it, but if it's not directly related to mixed martial arts, they only talk about it. They don't cover it and give it the attention as much as you do. Because you mentioned a fighter, you're mentioning his actual current ranking as a grappler, his current wins, and I appreciate that respect, man. A lot of guys don't do that. They just kind of throw it in there to make it seem like they're much smarter than they actually are. So I appreciate you showing that dedication to the craft of grappling and making sure that these people are given their props for what they're doing.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a big time in the sport, and I'm looking forward to this weekend. So with that, man, we're gonna go ahead and close out, man. As always, I appreciate all you're doing, and we'll be back here next week to talk more about the world of MMA and everything that goes on within it.
All right, sir. You have a good week and be safe.
Have a good one, sir.